Chapter 12, Reporting, page number 184. We can refer to what someone says by repeating the original words of the speaker. He says, "I am sorry." This is called direct speech. When we don't need or want to repeat the actual words of the speaker, we can use indirect speech. He said that he was sorry, or a summary report. He apologized. 1. Read through this story and find another two sentences containing the verb say, used with 1. Direct speech. 2. Indirect speech. A. On Sunday afternoons, my grandmother used to take me with her to visit Mr. Callum Mackenzie. My grandmother and Mrs. Mackenzie, his wife, had been good friends and had gone to church together every Sunday. When Mrs. Mackenzie died, my grandmother was one of the women who helped Mr. Mackenzie, and she still liked to visit him, even on the coldest winter days. B. Mr. Mackenzie was, as my grandmother put it, a man of few words. This probably wasn't obvious to everyone, because when we arrived, he would always call out, "Well, hello there," and give us a big smile, like a friendly neighbor ready to stop and chat. But I never saw him talking to any of the neighbors. I remember one time, my grandmother commented that maybe he didn't speak much because he didn't hear as well as he used to. Mr. Mackenzie turned in his chair. "Maybe I don't hear anything worth talking about," he grumbled. My grandmother would tell him about everything that had been going on in the church as she walked around the house, picking things up and putting them away. The news would be served with the tea and cakes we always had on Sundays with him. From the outside, it would have sounded as if we were all having a lively conversation, punctuated by the sound of teaspoons clicking on saucers. D. When we cleared the tea things away and my grandmother disappeared into the kitchen, a silence would fall over the living room. I would sit quietly with Mr. Mackenzie and stare into the glowing embers of the open fire. He would cut up chunks of black tobacco and put them in his pipe and light it. He'd puff away with his eyes almost closed, and the sweet smell filled the warm room. E. In my English class, we had read a story about the poets Wordsworth and Coleridge. One time, Wordsworth went to visit Coleridge at his cottage. He walked in, greeted his friend, and sat down. He didn't say another word for 3 hours, nor did Coleridge. Then Wordsworth got up and, as he was leaving, thanked Coleridge for a perfect evening. The teacher asked us what we thought about the story, and those who had opinions mostly said that it was a strange story, or impossible, or that poets must be weird people. I didn't say anything. F. When we eventually got ready to leave, my grandmother would give Mr. Mackenzie advice about eating and his health. He would just nod and say, "Thanks for coming round," in a voice that told us he had had a perfect afternoon. 2. Choose one of the following as the final sentence of each of the paragraphs from A to F above. 1. But it was really only my grandmother who was talking. 2. We could easily spend an hour like that. We could easily spend an hour like that. 3. He didn't say much, but he obviously wasn't deaf. 4. It already felt so much colder when you left. 5. She said we were going just to see. She said we were going just to see how Callum is doing. Just to see. 5. She said we are going just to see. She said we are going just to see. Just to see. She said we are going just to see how Callum is doing. 6. It didn't seem strange to me, and I knew it wasn't impossible. A. On Sunday afternoons, my grandmother used to take me with her to visit Mr. Callum McKenzie. My grandmother and Mrs. McKenzie, his wife, had been good friends and had gone to church together every Sunday. When Mrs. McKenzie died, my grandmother was one of the women who helped Mr. McKenzie, and she still liked to visit him, even on the coldest winter days. She said we are going just to see how Callum is doing. B. Mr. McKenzie was, as my grandmother put it, a man of few words. This probably wasn't obvious to everyone, because when he arrived, he would always call out, "Well, hello there," and give us a big smile like a friendly neighbor ready to stop and chat. But I never saw him talking to any of the neighbors. I remember one time my grandmother commented that maybe he didn't speak much because he didn't hear as well as he used to. Mr. McKenzie turned in his chair. "Maybe I don't hear anything worth talking about," he grumbled. He didn't say much, but he obviously wasn't deaf. C. My grandmother would tell him about everything that had been going on in the church as she walked around the house, picking things up and putting them away. The news would be served with the tea and cakes we always had on Sundays with him. From the outside, it would have sounded as if we were all having a lively conversation, punctuated by the sound of teaspoons clinking on saucers. From the outside, it would have sounded as if we were all having a lively conversation, punctuated by the sound of teaspoons clinking on saucers. But it was really only my grandmother who was talking. D. When he cleared the tea things away and my grandmother disappeared into the kitchen, a silence would fall over the living room. When he cleared the tea things away and my grandmother disappeared into the kitchen, a silence would fall over the living room. I would sit quietly with Mr. McKenzie and stare into the glowing embers of the open fire. He would cut up chunks of black tobacco and put them in his pipe and light it. He'd puff away, his eyes almost closed. He'd puff away with his eyes almost closed, as the sweet smell filled the warm room. We could easily spend an hour like that. E. In my English class, we had read a story about the poet Wordsworth and Coleridge. One time, Wordsworth went to visit Coleridge at his cottage. He walked in, greeted his friend, and sat down. He didn't say another word for 3 hours. He didn't say another word for 3 hours, nor did Coleridge. Then Wordsworth got up and, as he was leaving, thanked Coleridge for a perfect evening. The teacher asked us what he thought about the story, and those who had opinions mostly said that it was a strange story or impossible, or that poets must be weird people. I didn't say anything. It didn't seem strange to me, and I knew it wasn't impossible. F. When he eventually got ready to leave, my grandmother would give Mr. McKenzie advice about eating and his health. When he eventually got ready to leave, my grandmother would give Mr. McKenzie advice about eating and his health. He would just nod and say, "Thanks for coming round," in a voice that told us he had had a perfect afternoon. It always felt so much colder when you left. Page number 149. Direct speech. We usually put direct speech in quotation marks after a reporting verb such as reply or say. 1. Mark said, I need you here. Dorothy replied, I can't come before next weekend. Quotation marks or inverted commas are double in American English. He said, I need you. We can also put the reporting verb with each subject. We can also put the reporting verb with each subject after direct speech 2, or in the middle of two parts of direct speech 3. We can also put the reporting verb with each subject after direct speech 2, or in the middle of two parts of direct speech 3. 2. That's too late, he said. Well, that's just too bad, she told him and put the phone down. That's too late, he said. Well, that's just too bad, she told him and put the phone down. 3. Hi, he began. It's me again. I was wondering, he continued, if we could start over. Hi, he began. It's me again. I was wondering, he continued, if we could start over. After direct speech, the reporting verb is sometimes put before its subject in the reporting clause 4, but not when the subject is a pronoun 5. After direct speech, the reporting verb is sometimes put before its subject in the reporting clause 4, but not when the subject is a pronoun 5. 4. We'll never give up, shouted one of the demonstrators as he was dragged away. We'll never give up, shouted one of the demonstrators as he was dragged away. 5. Where's the team? He asked impatiently. Not here yet, she replied. Where's the team? He asked impatiently. Not here yet, she replied. Not, replied she, but she replied. Not here yet, she replied. Direct speech is sometimes reported in brackets 6 or after a colon 7 without a reporting verb. Direct speech is sometimes reported in brackets 6 or after a colon 7 without a reporting verb. We can also use direct speech to report thoughts and reactions as if they had been spoken. 8. 6. Bleeder Danner didn't want her daughter to be an actress. I thought she was too bright. Bleeder Danner didn't want her daughter to be an actress. I thought she was too bright. 7. Ines Feltro never had any doubt. I always knew what I wanted to do. Ines Feltro never had any doubt. I always knew what I wanted to do. 8. I suddenly realized I hate him. Then I thought, oh no, when I remembered that kiss. I suddenly realized I hate him. Then I thought, oh no, when I remembered that kiss. We use quotation marks when you want to report exactly a specific word, phrase, or title. 9. We put double quotation marks around direct speech that is quoted within another piece of direct speech. 10. 9. There was a sign with no entry printed in big red letters. There was a sign with no entry printed in big red letters. Have you read War and Peace? Have you read War and Peace? 10. She said, I heard someone whisper John, and I turned, but no one was there. She said, I heard someone whisper John, and I turned, but no one was there. In American English, single quotation marks are used around direct speech quoted within direct speech. I heard someone whisper John, and I turned, but no one was there. 3. Find an example of each of the following in the story on page 148. 1. A reporting verb, not say, before direct speech. Put, call out. A reporting verb after direct speech. A reporting verb after direct speech. Grumbled. On Sunday afternoons, my grandmother used to take me with her to visit Mr. Callum McCangy. My grandmother and Mrs. McCangy, his wife, had been good friends and had gone to church together every Sunday. When Mrs. McCangy died, my grandmother was one of the women who helped Mr. McCangy, and she still liked to visit him, even on the coldest winter days. She said, "We are going just to see how Callum is doing." B. Mr. McCangy was, as my grandmother put it, a man of few words. This probably wasn't obvious to everyone, because when he arrived, he would always call out, "Well, hello there," and give us a big smile like a friendly neighbor, ready to stop and chat. But I never saw him talking to any of the neighbors. I remember one time my grandmother commented that maybe he didn't speak much because he didn't hear as well as he used to. Mr. McCangy turned in his chair. "Maybe I don't hear anything worth talking about," he grumbled. He didn't say much, but he obviously wasn't deaf. See, my grandmother would tell him about everything that had been going on in the church as she walked around the house, picking things up and putting them away. The news would be served with the tea and cakes we always had on Sundays with him. From the outside, it would have sounded as if we were all having a lively conversation, punctuated by the sound of teaspoons clicking on saucers. But it was really only my grandmother who was talking. D. When he cleared the tea things away and my grandmother disappeared into the kitchen, a silence would fall over the living room. I would sit quietly with Mr. McCangy and stare into the glowing embers of the open fire. He would cut up chunks of black tobacco and put them in his pipe and light it. He'd puff away, his eyes almost closed, as the sweet smell filled the warm room. We could easily spend an hour like that. We could easily spend an hour like that. He'd puff away with his eyes almost closed, as the sweet smell filled the warm room. We could easily spend an hour like that. E. In my English class, we had read a story about the poets Wordsworth and Coleridge. In my English class, we had read a story about the poets Wordsworth and Coleridge. One time, Wordsworth went to visit Coleridge at his cottage. He walked in, greeted his friend, and sat down. He didn't say another word for 3 hours. Nor did Coleridge. Then Wordsworth got up and, as he was leaving, thanked Coleridge for a perfect evening. The teacher asked us what he thought about the story, and those who had opinions mostly said that it was a strange story or impossible, or that poets must be weird people. I didn't say anything. It didn't seem strange to me, and I knew it wasn't impossible. F. When he eventually got ready to leave, my grandmother would give Mr. McCangy advice about eating and his health. When he eventually got ready to leave, my grandmother would give Mr. McCangy advice about eating and his health. He would just nod and say, "Thanks for coming round," in a voice that told us he had had a perfect afternoon. It always felt so much colder when he left. 4. Using examples from 1 to 3 above as a guide, complete these punctuation rules with the words, comma, or quotation mark. Using examples from 1 to 3 above as a guide, complete these punctuation rules with the words, comma, or quotation mark. After the reporting verb before direct speech, we put the comma before the quotation mark. After direct speech before the reporting verb plus subject, we put the comma before the quotation mark. When the reporting verb plus subject is in the middle of the part of direct speech, we use a quotation mark to close the first part and a quotation mark to open the second part. When the reporting verb plus subject is in the middle of the part of direct speech, we use a quotation mark to close the first part and a quotation mark to open the second part. 5. Add the appropriate punctuation to this text. After the reporting verb before direct speech, we put the comma before the quotation mark. After direct speech before the reporting verb plus subject, we put the comma before the quotation mark. When the reporting verb plus subject is in the middle of the part of direct speech, we use a quotation mark to close the first part and a quotation mark to open the second part. When the reporting verb plus subject is in the middle of the part of direct speech, we use a quotation mark to close the first part and a quotation mark to open the second part. 5. Add the appropriate punctuation to this text. Add the appropriate punctuation to this text. Add the appropriate punctuation to this text. Susanna, Mrs. Alder called out. Susanna, Mrs. Alder called out. I'd like you to come and meet Mike. A girl appeared in the doorway. How do you do? She said. Nice to meet you, he mumbled. Please don't call him Michael or Mickey or any other silly names, warned Mrs. Alder as he swept out of the room. Have you read Harry Potter? Susanna suddenly said. What one? He asked. Oh no, you little Mickey Mouse, she said as she came into the room. You must say which one, not what one, if you are going to survive here. Page number 150. Indirect. Susanna, Mrs. Alder called out. Susanna, Mrs. Alder called out. I'd like you to come and meet Mike. A girl appeared in the doorway. How do you do? She said. Nice to meet you, he mumbled. Please don't call him Michael or Mickey or any other silly names, warned Mrs. Alder as he swept out of the room. Have you read Harry Potter? Susanna suddenly said. What one? He asked. Oh no, you little Mickey Mouse, she said as she came into the room. You must say which one, not what one, if you are going to survive here. Page number 150. Indirect speech. We use indirect speech or reported speech to report the meaning of what was said, not the exact words. We put indirect speech in a noun clause beginning with that, one, or a WH word, what, where, when, etc. 2. In informal usage, we often omit that. 1. It's a strange story. They said that it was a strange story. 2. What do you think about the story? The teacher asked us what we thought about the story. Words for places, times, and people in indirect speech. In indirect speech, we change those words that refer to the speaker's situation, I, my, this, to words that reflect the different point of view of the person reporting, she, her, that. In indirect speech, we change those words that refer to the speaker's situation, I, my, this, to words that reflect the different point of view of the person reporting, she, her, that. 3. I don't like my hair in this style. She said she didn't like her hair in that style. We usually change words that refer to the place of speaking, 4, and the time of speaking, 5, to reflect the point of view of the person reporting. 4. Wordsworth lived here, but not in this particular cottage. The tour guide explained that Wordsworth had lived there, but not in that particular cottage. 5. It rained yesterday and most of last week. The workman pointed out that it had rained the day before and most of the previous week. Note also, now, then, tomorrow, the next day, 2 days ago, 2 days earlier. We also change pronouns to reflect the different point of view of the person reporting. We also change pronouns to reflect the different point of view of the person reporting. We also change pronouns to reflect the different point of view of the person reporting. 6. We fixed it ourselves. The boys claimed that they had fixed it themselves. 7. Tom said to Anne, "I'll give you my book." Tom said that he would give her his book. 8. Sandra said to me, "I'll give you my book." Sandra said that she would give me her book. Tense in indirect speech. After a reporting verb in the past simple, we usually change present simple to past simple, 9, and present perfect to past perfect, 10. 9. It is late and I have a headache. She complained that it was late and she had a headache. 10. I've heard that they have been arguing. He said he'd heard that they had been arguing. You can refer to a past simple as a past simple or change it to a past perfect to emphasize that the event was earlier in the past. 11. I didn't see Mark. He said he didn't see Mark, or he said he hadn't seen Mark. We can use the present simple after reporting verbs in the present simple for current 12, future 13, or permanent 14 situations. After a reporting verb in the past, we sometimes use a verb in the present for a situation that has not changed. 15. After a reporting verb in the past, we sometimes use a verb in the present for a situation that has not changed. 15. 12. Business is good and profits are up. The Telco reports that business is good and profits are up. 13. It is going to be very cold. The forecast says that it is going to be very cold. 14. My parents live in Monaco. She likes to tell everyone that her parents live in Monaco. She likes to tell everyone that her parents live in Monaco. 15. I love you. He said he loved me. Modals in indirect speech. We usually change the modals can, could, may, might, and will, would in indirect speech. 16. You can go. He said we could go. I'll wait. She said that she would wait. We don't change could, might, ought to, or should from direct to indirect speech. We don't change could, might, ought to, or should from direct to indirect speech. We change shall to would in predictions 17 and to should in offers or suggestions 18. 17. I shall do it right away. I shall do it right away. I remember she said that she would do it right away. 18. Shall I close the door? The new student asked if he should close the door. The new student asked if he should close the door. We can use must or had to when you refer that something was necessary. 19. You must do more. He said we must do more. Or he said we had to do more. Page number 151. 6. Complete each sentence in such a way that it is as similar as possible in meaning to the sentence above it. Complete each sentence in such a way that it is as similar as possible in meaning to this sentence above it. 1. I left my jacket here yesterday. He said that he left his jacket there the day before. 2. Colin's new book is the funniest thing I've ever read. The reviewer wrote that Colin's new book was the funniest thing he or she had ever read. The reviewer wrote that Colin's new book was the funniest thing he or she had ever read. 3. We won't eat it now, but we may have it for lunch tomorrow. She said that they wouldn't eat it then, but they might have it for lunch the next day. She said that they wouldn't eat it then, but they might have it for lunch the following day. 4. You should take as much water as you can carry. He advised us that we should take as much water as we could carry. 5. I must get something to eat or I'll faint. You told me that you had to get something to eat or you'd faint. You told me that you must get something to eat or you'd faint. 6. Demand for new computers in the UK is declining. Comp is reporting that demand for new computers in the UK is declining. 7. Shall I get rid of these old boxes in the cupboard? Shall I get rid of these old boxes in the cupboard? She asked if she should get rid of those old boxes in the cupboard. She asked if she should get rid of those old boxes in the cupboard. 7. Complete this text with these verbs. Are, were, eat, watch, had, live, lived, can, could, can't, won't, will, would. When she died at the age of 122, Jeannie Calment was the oldest person on record. When she died at the age of 122, Jeannie Calment was the oldest person on record. This amazing woman from Alsace in France had not exactly lived what might be described as a healthy lifestyle. Family and friends reported that she was fond of cheese, wine, and chocolate. She had also smoked cigarettes. She had also smoked cigarettes until she was 117. We asked several experts how a person, especially a cigarette smoker, could live so long. We asked several experts how a person, especially a cigarette smoker, could live so long. We asked several experts how a person, especially a cigarette smoker, could live so long. We asked several experts how a person, especially a cigarette smoker, could live so long. They offered more than one answer. The average life expectancy is now about 80 for women and 75 for men, observed Dr. Elizabeth Jones, director of the Center of Studies on Aging. The average life expectancy is now about 80 for women and 75 for men, observed Dr. Elizabeth Jones, director of the Center for Studies on Aging. She said that there has been a steady rise in the maximum age of death throughout Europe during the first century, and a major reason for this is improved medical care. She said that there has been a steady rise in the maximum age of death throughout Europe during the first century, and a major reason for this is improved medical care. Another researcher, Dr. Michael Glass, says there are no theoretical reasons why we can't have a lifespan of 200 years. Dr. Michael Glass says there are no theoretical reasons why we can't have a lifespan of 200 years. Better medical care won't be the only factor, according to Dr. Glass. He explained that genetic engineering would soon allow us to repair or replace damaged cells, the real cause of aging. He explained that genetic engineering would soon allow us to repair or replace damaged cells, the real cause of aging. He believes that we will be able to stop the aging process. Other researchers have noticed that attitude is also an important factor in longer life. Dr. John Bach is the author of Living Beyond 100. Those who live to a ripe old age, he says, are those who can cope with stress and other difficulties in life. He wrote in his best-selling book that people who lived past 100 were almost always optimistic and had a great attitude to life. He wrote in his best-selling book that people who lived past 100 were almost always optimistic and had a great attitude to life. He wrote in his best-selling book that people who lived past 100 were almost always optimistic and had a great attitude to life. Page number 152. Reporting verbs. Reporting verbs with that clauses. We use verbs such as mention or say as reporting verbs before that clauses with indirect speech. 1. I've been ill. I've been ill. She mentioned that she'd been ill. It's cold. Kara said that it was cold. After reporting verbs such as tell and assure, we must include an object, the hearer, before that clause. 2. She has gone home. He told me that she had gone home. Not, he told that she had gone home, but he told he told me that she had gone home. He told me that she had gone home. 3. You will be paid. I assured them that they would be paid. I assured them that they would be paid. Not, I assured that they would, but I assured them that they would be paid. Other verbs used like this include convince, inform, notify, persuade, remind. 1. After a reporting verb such as say, we can use to object before that clause. 4. After a reporting verb such as agree, we use with object before that clause. 5. 4. I'm not ready. He said to me that he wasn't ready. Not, he said to me that he wasn't ready, but he said to me that he wasn't ready. Other verbs used like this include admit, confess, mention, propose, report. 5. You are right. There is a mistake. He agreed with me that there was a mistake. Not he agreed me that there was a mistake, but he agreed that there was a mistake, or he agreed with me that there was a mistake. Other verbs used like this include argue, check, confirm, disagree. Reporting verbs with the infinitive and gerund. After reporting verbs such as invite and encourage, we include an object before an infinitive. 6. You can go with me. He invited us to go with him. Not he invited us that we could go, but he invited us to go, or he invited us to go with him. 7. You shouldn't quit. He encouraged me not to quit. Not she encouraged not to quit, but she encouraged me not to quit. Other verbs used like this include ask, expect, order, remind, urge. 1. After a reporting verb such as offer, we don't include an object before an infinitive. 8. I will help you later. He offered to help us later. He offered to help us later. Not he offered us to help us later, but he offered to help us later. He offered to help us later. Other verbs used like this include apply, decide, decline, demand, refuse, volunteer. After a reporting verb such as promise, we can use an infinitive or a declaration. 9. I'll fix it. He promised to fix it. He promised to fix it. Or he promised that he would fix it. Other verbs used like this include agree, claim, hope, propose, threat, vow. After reporting verbs such as deny and suggest, we can use a gerund or a declaration. 10. I didn't take it. She denied taking it, or she denied that she had taken it. She denied that she had taken it. 11. You should leave. He suggested leave. He suggested leaving. He suggested leaving, or he suggested that they should leave. Not he suggested them leaving, but he suggested leaving, or he suggested their leaving. Not he suggested them to leave, but he suggested their leaving. Not he suggested to leave, but he suggested leaving. He suggested leaving. Other verbs used like this include admit, mention, propose, recommend, report. Reporting verbs in summary report. We can use some reporting verbs to summarize what was said. 12. Some verbs, such as speak, talk, and sing, are only used in summary reports, not with direct or indirect speech. 13. Some verbs, such as speak, talk, and sing, are only used in summary reports, not with direct or indirect speech. 13. Some verbs, such as speak, talk, and sing, are only used in summary reports, not with direct or indirect speech. 13. 12. Don't come back or else. They threatened us. It was me. I did it. It was me. I did it. He confessed. 13. He talked to Kevin about the problem. He talked to Kevin about the problem. He talked to Kevin about the problem. She spoke briefly to reporters. She spoke briefly to reporters. She spoke briefly to reporters. I thanked them. Not he talked to me, hi, how are you? But he told me, how are you? Not she spoke to us that she liked it, but she said to us that she liked it. We can use reporting verbs such as boast or lie with the verb to create a summary report. 14. I beat everyone. I'm the best. I beat everyone. I'm the best. He boasted about his win. He lied about how he did it. Other verbs used like this include complain, explain, inquire, joke, protest, speak, write. Page number 153. 8. Complete each sentence in such a way that it is as similar as possible in meaning to the sentence above it. 1. Mr. Brody, there's something wrong with the light. I mentioned to Mr. Brody that there was something wrong with the light. 2. Julia, you and your friends have to tidy up after the party. I reminded Julia that she and her friends had to tidy up after the party. I reminded Julia that she and her friends had to tidy up after the party. 3. Don't touch any of the wires. He wanted them not to touch any of the wires. He wanted me not to touch any of the wires. 4. I didn't do anything wrong. He denied doing anything wrong. He denied that she did anything wrong. She denied having done anything wrong. He denied that he had done anything wrong. 9. Complete this text with the appropriate forms of these reporting verbs. Ask, beg, claim, explain, mention, shout, talk, tell, think, wonder. I was in the Arctic last summer to photograph foxes, but I had been having no luck. I was on my way home one day when I saw a construction engineer called Malcolm Davidson waving and shouting to me as I drove by. We had met the previous weekend, and he had mentioned some areas further north where I might find foxes. I wondered why he was trying to stop me there. I pulled over and got out to talk to him. He asked if I was still looking for foxes. We walked over to what was left of some old rusted cars by the side of the road. I looked down and saw three little foxes asleep beside the broken car door. He told me that he would have to catch them all and move them away from there. He told me that he have to catch them all and move them away from there. He told me that he would have to catch them all and move them away from there. It was his next construction site. He explained, I'm afraid that when you claim that we are doing developing or improving an area, we don't always make things better for wild animals. I'm afraid that when you claim that we are developing or improving an area, we don't always make things better for wild animals. Let me get my camera. Let me get my camera. Let me get my camera and take some photos before you do anything, I begged him. Let me get my camera and take some photos before you do anything, I begged him. Let me get my camera and take some photos before you do anything, I begged him. I ran to get my camera. I do hope they will survive, I thought to myself. I do hope they will survive, I thought to myself. That afternoon, I used up all the film I had, while the young foxes played among the old cars. 10. Editing. Correct the mistakes in this text. The word biker is used for people who ride motorcycles. The word biker is used for people who ride motorcycles. The word biker is used for people who ride motorcycles. They sometimes ride around in gangs. Some people say that bikers are dangerous criminals, but I can't agree with them that all bikers are like that. Some people say that bikers are dangerous criminals, but I can't agree with them that all bikers are like that. One time, I had a flat tire on the motorway, and two bikers in black leather jackets stopped and offered to help me. I explained to them that I couldn't get the wheel off. One of them said that it was no problem, and assured me that it wouldn't take long. He even suggested that I should stand behind the car for safety and warned me that I should watch out for broken glass on the ground. He even suggested that I should stand behind the car for safety and warned me that I should watch out for broken glass on the ground. He even suggested standing behind the car for safety and warned me to watch out for broken glass on the ground. They fixed it really quickly and joked about the small wheels on my little car. I told them thanks. I said thanks to them. I thanked them. They refused to take any money when I offered to pay them. They were like angels. Actually, it said on their jackets that they were hells angels. Page number 154. Reporting statements and questions. Reporting statements. Informal usage. We usually include that after reporting verbs when you report a statement. 1. But in informal usage, we often omit that. 2. 1. The Prime Minister said that she would consider it. The police report that crime is down. 2. She said she'd think about it. She said she'd think about it. I told him I was leaving. He agreed. it was a good idea. He agreed it was a good idea. He agreed it was a good idea. We usually include that after verbs that describe the speaker's intention, complain, deny, etc. 3. The manner of speaking. 4. Phrasal verbs. 5. And when you include other information between the reporting verb and the deck clause. 6. 3. They complained that they had been left out. He denied that he was responsive. 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 4. She whispered that she had to go. She whispered that she had to go. The foreman shouted that he was innocent. 5. One student pointed out that the date was wrong. She called out that dinner was ready. 6. He said in last week's meeting that you are wrong. We agree with the critics that it's old. You can use nouns such as announcement and response before a deck clause containing indirect speech to refer to statements. After these nouns, we usually include that. You can use nouns such as announcement and response before a deck clause containing indirect speech to refer to statements. After these nouns, we usually include that. We can use nouns such as announcement and response before a deck clause containing indirect speech to refer to statements. After these nouns, we usually include that. 7. Classes are cancelled. Did you hear the announcement that classes were cancelled? Did you hear the announcement that classes were cancelled? Did you hear the announcement that classes were cancelled? 8. I worked hard. His response that he worked hard isn't true. Not his response he worked hard, but his response that he worked hard isn't true. Other nouns used like this include argument, claim, comment, explanation, report, statement. We can also report statements by using a noun with be and a deck clause containing indirect speech. 9. It will cost a lot. Her only comment was that it would cost a lot. Reporting questions. We begin reported questions or indirect questions with the WH words. 10. If or whether. 11. 10. Who is she? He asked who she was. What does she do? He asked what she did. 11. Is she a doctor or a nurse? He wanted to know if she was a doctor or a nurse. He wanted to know whether she was a doctor or a nurse. We form indirect questions with the subject before the verb and no question mark. 12. We don't change the word order when a WH word is the subject of the question. 13. 12. Where are the keys? Where are the keys? I asked where the keys were. Not I asked where are the keys, but I asked where the keys were. 13. Who has the keys? I asked who has the keys. Not I asked who the keys had, but I asked who had the keys. We can refer to some WH questions with should about the right thing to do by using an infinitive. 14. When should I come and what should I do? I asked them when to come and what to do. Note that why is not used in this way. I asked them why I should do it. Not I asked them why to do it, but I asked them why I should do it. We begin indirect yes-no questions with if or whether. 15. Are you a nurse? I asked if she was a nurse, or I asked whether she was a nurse. Not I asked if was she a nurse. Not I asked if was she a nurse. I asked if was she a nurse, but I asked if she was a nurse. I asked if she was a nurse. We use whether, not if, after a proposition. We use whether, not if, after a proposition, 16, before an infinitive, 17, and after the above question, 18. We use whether, not if, after a proposition, 16, before an infinitive, 17, and after the above question, 18. Whether or not can be used as a phrase, but not if or not, 19. 16. Is it okay to use a dictionary? Is it okay to use a dictionary? Someone inquired about whether it was okay to use a dictionary. Not someone inquired about if it was okay to use a dictionary, but someone inquired about whether it was okay to use a dictionary. 17. Should I wait for him? Should I wait for him? She's wondering whether to wait for him. She's wondering whether to wait for him. Not she's wondering if to wait for him, but she's wondering whether to wait for him. 18. Are they really terrorists? Are they really terrorists? The reporter questioned whether they were really terrorists. The reporter questioned whether they were really terrorists. 19. Did he win or not? Did he win or not? I asked whether or not he won. I asked whether or not he won. Well, I asked whether he won or not. I asked whether he won or not. I asked if he won or not. I asked if he won or not. I asked if he won or not. I asked whether or not he won. I asked whether he won or not. I asked if he won or not. 155. 11. Complete each sentence using indirect speech in such a way that it is as similar as possible in meaning to the sentence above it. Complete each sentence using indirect speech in such a way that it is as similar as possible in meaning to the sentence above it. 1. I'm not guilty, called out one of the defendants. I'm not guilty, called out one of the defendants. One of the defendants called out that she was not guilty. One of the defendants called out that she was not guilty. 2. It really surprised us when she said she'd been adopted. Her statement that she'd been adopted really surprised us. Her statement that she'd been adopted really surprised us. Her statement that she'd been adopted really surprised us. 3. The student's argument is that the cost of tuition has increased too much, and I agree. I agree with the student's argument that the cost of tuition has increased too much. I agree with the student. I agree with the student's argument that the cost of tuition has increased too much. I agree with the student's argument that the cost of tuition has increased too much. 4. He claimed, I'm not a thief, but no one believed him. No one believed his claim that he was not a thief. No one believed his claim that he was not a thief. No one believed his claim not to be a thief. 12. Choose an ending from A to D for each beginning from 1 to 4 and add the words that, where, whether, or who. 1. Some of them were arguing about whether to leave or stay there for another day. Some of them were arguing about whether to leave or stay there for another day. 2. The teacher is trying to find out who isn't here. The teacher is trying to find out who isn't here. 3. I asked another student where to find the library. I asked another student where to find the library. 4. We heard one report that the weather was going to be bad. We heard one report that the weather was going to be bad. we heard one report that the weather was going to be bad. 13. Rewrite these sentences after correcting the mistakes. 1. One of the visitors asked about whether there would be a fridge in the hotel room. One of the visitors asked about whether there would be a fridge in the hotel room. One of the visitors asked if there would be a fridge in the hotel room. 2. He asked me why I did that. I pointed out that it was part of my job. He asked me why I had done that, and I pointed out that it was part of my job. He asked me why I had done that, and I pointed out that it was part of my job. He asked me why I had done that, and I pointed out that it was part of my job. 3. She asked me what to do next, and my response was that she should get some chairs. She asked me what to do next, and my response was that she should get some chairs. He asked me what she should do next, and my response was that she should get some chairs. 4. Her explanation that no one asked her whether or not she had a degree was incredible. Her explanation that no one asked her whether or not she had a degree was incredible. 14. Change these statements and questions to indirect speech and add them to the text. Change these statements and questions to indirect speech and add them to the text. Change these statements and questions to indirect speech and add them to the text. There is a monster under my bed. I haven't, but I know it has big teeth. Why aren't you sleeping? What is your monster? What is your monster? What is your monster? Have you seen the monster? Where did it come from? Where did it come from? Where did it come from? One time when I was babysitting for some friends, their 5-year-old daughter got out of bed and came into the living room. I asked her why she wasn't sleeping. She climbed onto the sofa beside me and whispered that there was a monster under her bed. I started to ask her what a monster was. Then I realized that she meant monster. I asked her if she had seen the monster. She said she hadn't, but she knew it had big teeth. She said that she hadn't, but that she knew it had big teeth. I asked her where it had come from. She didn't know, but it had really big eyes and sharp teeth. We eventually both fell asleep on the sofa, and luckily for us, the monster stayed in the bedroom. Page number 156. Refuting orders, requests, advice, and opinions. Refuting orders and requests. We usually refute orders using tell with an object and infinitive. We usually refute orders using tell with an object and infinitive. We usually refute orders using tell with an object and an infinitive. 1. Don't touch it. He told us not to touch it. Be quiet. She told everyone to be quiet. Other less common verbs used to refute orders include command, direct, instruct, order. We can also refute orders in a declaration with the modals have to or must. 2. After verbs such as demand and insist, a subjunctive is sometimes used in more formal situations. 3. 2. Stop arguing. Their mother told them that they had to stop arguing. Their mother told them that they must stop arguing. 3. Do it yourself. He insisted that I had to do it myself. He insisted that I had to do it myself. He insisted that I do it myself. He insisted that I do it myself. We usually refer to requests using ask with an object and an infinitive. 4. When you refer to requests by speakers about their own actions, we don't include an object before the infinitive. 5. 4. Please don't smoke. I asked him not to smoke. Come in. He asked me to come in. 5. May I leave? She asked to leave. She asked to leave. Can I go? He asked to go. He asked to go. Not he asked me to go, but he asked to go. He asked to go. Other verbs used to refer to requests include beg, plead with, request. We can also refer to requests in an if clause with the modals could or would. We can also refer to requests in an if clause with the modals could or would. 6. Please help me. The old man asked us if we could help him. The old man asked us if we would help him. The old man asked if we could help him. The old man asked if we would help him. Reporting advice. We can report advice by using verbs such as recommend or suggest, followed by a declaration with should, 7, or a subjunctive in more formal usage. 8. We can also use a gerund for the suggested action when you don't want to mention who will perform the action. 9. 7. You should go by train. He recommended that we should go by train. 8. You should take the express train. He suggested that we take the express train. 9. You should drive. He recommended driving. Not he recommended us driving, but he recommended driving. We can use the verb advise with an object and an infinitive. 10. Or with a declaration or a gerund. 11. 10. Wait a few days. She advised him to wait a few days. Not she suggested him to wait, but she advised him to wait. 11. She advised him that he should wait a few days. She advised that he wait a few days. She advised waiting a few days. We can use different reporting verbs such as remind and warn with that clauses to introduce different kinds of reported advice. We can use different reporting verbs such as remind and warn with that clauses to introduce different kinds of reported advice. 12. A text will be much faster. She reminded him that a text would be much faster. 13. You must be careful. She warned them that they must be careful. They warned them that they must be careful. She warned them that they had to be careful. We can also report a warning by using an infinitive. She warned them to be careful. Reporting opinions. We use thinking verbs with that clauses to report opinions. 14. Oh, it's nice. She thought that it was nice. I'll win. He believed that he will win. Other verbs used like this include expect, feel, imagine, reckon, suppose, suspect. You can use the verbs say and tell in the continuous to report general opinions in informal situations. 15. The student was saying that the test was unfair. Teachers are telling us there's a problem. We can also report opinions and feelings with nouns, 16, and adjectives, 17, before that clauses. 16. Girls match earlier than boys. It is her view that girls match earlier than boys. Other nouns used like this include belief, conclusion, diagnosis, hypothesis, opinion, theory. 17. It's a mistake. I was sure that it was a mistake. She is certain that it is a mistake. She is certain that it is a mistake. Other adjectives used like this include aware, convinced, tough, positive, sorry, worried. Page number 100. 57. Page number 157. 15. Complete each sentence in such a way that it is as similar as possible in meaning to the sentence above it. Complete each sentence in such a way that it is as similar as possible in meaning to the sentence above it. 1. Professor to her student. Please do not eat or drink during lectures. The professor asked her student not to eat or drink during lectures. The professor asked her students if they would not eat or drink during lectures. 2. Guard to the prisoner. Stand up when the judge comes in. The guard ordered the prisoner to stand up when the judge came in. 3. Worker to his boss. Can I leave early on Friday? The worker asked his boss if he could leave early on Friday. The worker asked if he could leave early on Friday. The worker asked to leave early on Friday. The worker asked to leave early on Friday. 4. Scott's mother to Scott. You should apply to several universities. Scott's mother recommended that he apply to several universities. Scott's mother recommended applying to several universities. 16. Change each piece of advice to an appropriate reported form and add it to the text. Change each piece of advice to an appropriate reported form and add it to the text. Change each piece of advice to an appropriate reported form and add it to the text. Place your napkin in your lap. Don't rest your elbows on the table. Chew your food with your mouth closed. Don't talk with your mouth full. Don't put a lot of food on your plate all at once. Don't take more food until it is offered. Don't take more food until it is offered. Ask somebody, please pass the salt. My friend Karen Curry and I were huddled beside a small heater in her room, eating slices of pizza from a cardboard Pizzaland container. She was telling me about an old book she had been reading called Table Manners for Young Ladies. It instructed the reader, when she is sitting at the table before the meal, that she place her napkin in her lap, and that she not rest her elbows on the table. It told her while she is eating, she should chew her food with her mouth closed, and she shouldn't talk with her mouth full. It told her while she is eating, she should chew her food with her mouth closed, and she shouldn't talk with her mouth full. Certain things were bad manners, and the book advised her that she shouldn't put a lot of food on her plate all at once, and that she shouldn't take more food until it is offered. Certain things were bad manners, and the book advised her that she shouldn't put a lot of food on her plate all at once, and that she shouldn't take more food until it is offered. It also said that when she needed something such as salt, she should ask somebody if they would pass the salt, rather than reach across the table for it. It also said that when she needed something such as salt, she should ask somebody if they would pass the salt, rather than reach across the table for it. Ah, the good old days, she sighed as she reached into the box for another slice. 17. Complete each sentence with an adjective or noun and a declaration based on one of the direct speech sentences. Complete each sentence with an adjective or noun and a declaration based on one of the direct speech sentences. Aware, positive, sorry, diagnosis, belief, recommendation. I lost my temper. Dogs aren't allowed here. You have an ear infection. Take the early flight to Glasgow. You will pass the exam. A perfect life can be achieved. 1. It was our travel agent's recommendation that we take the early flight to Glasgow. 2. Idealism is the belief that a perfect life can be achieved. 3. My doctor's diagnosis was that I had an ear infection. 4. Sarah has quietened down and she's very sorry that she lost her temper. Sarah has quietened down and she's very sorry that she lost her temper. 5. Our teacher was pointed that we would all pass the exam. Our teacher was pointed that we would all pass the exam. 6. The visitor obviously wasn't aware that dogs weren't allowed here. Allowed there. The visitor obviously wasn't aware that dogs weren't allowed there. The visitor obviously wasn't aware that dogs weren't allowed there. Page number 158. Test. A. Choose the word or phrase that best completes each sentence. Choose the word or phrase that best completes each sentence. 1. They recommended that the windows not be opened. 2. He ordered them not to take part. 3. She replied that she liked cold coffee. She replied that she liked cold coffee. 4. The teachers were talking about a trip to see castles, and the students were wondering when it was. The teachers were talking about a trip to see castles, and the students were wondering when it was. The teachers were talking about a trip to see castles, and the students were wondering when it was. 5. Her father mentioned that Ellen had been to Prague before. Her father mentioned that Ellen had been to Prague before. B. Identify the one underlined expression A, B, C, or D that must be changed in order to correct the sentence. 1. We thought flying would be faster, but when Thomas suggested she go by train, Marla realized she had enough time and she would be able to see all the small towns along the way. 2. Because I suspected that our bill was too high, I asked our waiter if he would check it again, and he agreed with me there had been no mistake. Because I suspected that our bill was too high, I asked our waiter if he would check it again, and he agreed with me there had been no mistake. 3. Jessica was complaining to the coach that she felt tired and told him she had to rest, but he encouraged her not to quit and said she didn't have much farther to go. Jessica was complaining to the coach that she felt tired and told him she had to rest, but he encouraged her not to quit and said she didn't have much farther to go. 4. One student inquired about whether it was okay to ask what was going to be in the test, and the teacher's only comment was that he had already told them what would be tested. One student inquired about whether it was okay to ask what was going to be in the test, and the teacher's only comment was that he had already told them what would be tested. 5. We've invited Josh to come, and he's offered to bring us extra food, but Linda has warned us that he sometimes promises to do things, then forgets completely. We've invited Josh to come, and he's offered to bring us extra food, but Linda has warned us that he sometimes promises to do things, then forgets completely. C. Complete this text with the appropriate forms of the verbs. Complete this text with the appropriate forms of the verbs. Ask, explain, point out, reply, not say, not speak, told, tell. In a best-selling book, You Just Don't Understand, Deborah Tanyan recalled a joke that her father liked to tell people. In a best-selling book, You Just Don't Understand, Deborah Tanyan recalled a joke that her father liked to tell people. In a best-selling book, You Just Don't Understand, Deborah Tanyan recalled a joke that her father liked to tell people. In the joke, a woman went to court to get a divorce from her husband. In the joke, a woman went to court to get a divorce from her husband. When the judge asked her why she wanted a divorce, she explained that her husband hadn't said anything to her in 2 years. The judge turned to the husband and asked him why he hadn't spoken to his wife in 2 years. The judge turned to the husband and asked him why he hadn't spoken to his wife in 2 years. The judge turned to the husband and asked him why he hadn't spoken to his wife in 2 years. The husband replied, I didn't want to interrupt her. The husband replied, I didn't want to interrupt her. Tanyan pointed out that the joke was based on an old-fashioned stereotype of women, that they talk all the time. Tanyan pointed out that the joke was based on old-fashioned stereotype of women, that they talk all the time. Her research had shown that it was, in fact, a false stereotype. Page number 159. D. Complete each sentence using indirect speech in such a way that it is as similar as possible in meaning to the sentence above it. D. Complete each sentence using indirect speech in such a way that it is as similar as possible in meaning to the sentence above it. 1. I'll buy the flowers myself. Mrs. Dalloway said she would buy the flowers herself. Mrs. Dalloway said she would buy the flowers herself. 2. Henny, did you leave your keys in the door? She asked Henny if he had left his keys in the door. 3. An announcement was made that the strike was over. There was an announcement that the strike was over. 4. I shall return tomorrow. His only comment was that he would return the day after. His only comment was that he would return the day after. His only comment was that he would return the following day. 5. It surprised us that he said, I won't do it. It surprised us that he said, I won't do it. His statement that he won't do it surprised us. His statement that he wouldn't do it surprised us. 6. I remember one time when my aunt said to me, don't talk with your mouth full. I remember one time when my aunt said to me, don't talk with your mouth full. I remember one time when my aunt told me that I mustn't talk with my mouth full. I remember one time when my aunt told me that I mustn't talk with my mouth full. I remember one time when my aunt told me not to talk with my mouth full. I remember one time when my aunt told me not to talk with my mouth full. I remember one time when my aunt told me not to talk with my mouth full. I remember one time when my aunt told me that I mustn't talk with my mouth full. 7. They said, you can stay at our house. They invited me to stay at their house. They invited us to stay at their house. E. Rewrite one of these sentences as indirect speech or a summary report in its face. Rewrite one of these sentences as indirect speech or a summary report in its face. Do you know where Rob is? I'll be there by 8 o'clock. I forgot that I promised to take my mother into town this morning. I'm sorry. I think he went out about half an hour ago. I was sitting in my living room, surrounded by my luggage, waiting for Rob to come and drive me to the airport. I was sitting in my living room, surrounded by my luggage, waiting for Rob to come and drive me to the airport. It was already 8, and there was still no sign of him. He had said he would be here by 8 o'clock. I had already tried to call him at home. His younger sister answered, so I asked her if she knew where Rob was. She sounded sleepy, but said she thought he had gone out about half an hour earlier. Normally, it would only take about 5 minutes to drive from his place to mine, so something had gone wrong. Suddenly, the phone rang. It was rough. He apologized for being late. He apologized for being late. He apologized for being late. He said that he was sorry for being late and explained that he had forgotten that he had promised to take his mother into town that morning. It wasn't the first time his forgetfulness had made me nervous, and his mother had made me take second place in his plans. It wasn't the first time his forgetfulness had made me nervous, and his mother had made me take second place in his plans.